Fortuna was the goddess of fortune and personification of luck in Roman religion. She might bring good or bad luck. She could be represented as veiled and blind, as in modern depictions of justice, and came to represent life's capriciousness. She was also a goddess of fate. As Atrox Fortuna, she claimed the young lives of the Princeps Augustus, her grandsons Gaius and Lucius, prospective heirs to the empire. Her father was said to be Jupiter, and like him, she could also be bountiful. As Annaria, she protected grain supplies. June 11th was sacred to her. On June 24th she was given cult at the festival of Fortuna. Cult. Fortuna's Roman cult was variously attributed to Servius Tullius, whose exceptional good fortune suggested their sexual intimacy, and to Ancus Marcius. The two earliest temples mentioned in Roman calendars were outside the city, on the right bank of the Tiber. The first temple dedicated to Fortuna was attributed to the Etruscan Servius Tullius, while the second is known to have been built in 293 BC as the fulfillment of a Roman promise made during later Etruscan wars. The date of dedication of her temples was the 24th of June, or Midsummer's Day, when celebrants from Rome annually floated to the temples downstream from the city. After undisclosed rituals they then rode back garlanded and inebriated. Also Fortuna had a temple at the Forum Boarium. Here Fortuna was twinned with the cult of Mater Matuta, and the paired temples have been revealed in the excavation beside the church of Sant'Uomo Buono. The cults are indeed archaic in date. Fortuna Primigenia of Praenesta was adopted by Romans at the end of 3rd BC in an important cult of Fortuna Publica Populi Romani on the Quirinales, outside the Porticalina. No temple at Rome, however, rivaled the magnificence of the Praenestine sanctuary. Fortuna's identity as personification of chance events was closely tied to Virtus. Public officials who lacked virtues invited ill fortune on themselves in Rome. Sallust uses the infamous Catilina's illustration: truly, when in the place of work, idleness, in place of the spirit of measure and equity, caprice and pride invade, fortune is changed, just as with morality. An oracle at the temple of Fortuna Primigenia in Praenesta used a form of divination in which a small boy picked out one of various futures that were written on oak rods. Cults to Fortuna in her many forms are attested throughout the Roman world. Dedications have been found to Fortuna Dubia, Fortuna Brevis and Fortuna Mala. She is found in a variety of domestic and personal contexts. During the early empire, an amulet from the house of Menander in Pompeii links her to the Egyptian goddess Isis, as Isis Fortuna. She is functionally related to the god Bonus Aventis, who is often represented as her counterpart. Both appear on amulets and intaglio engraved gems across the Roman world. In the context of the early Republican period account of Coriolanus, in around 488 BC the Roman Senate dedicated a temple to Fortuna on account of the services of the matrons of Rome in saving the city from destruction. Her name seems to derive from Vortumna, the earliest reference to the Wheel of Fortune, emblematic of the endless changes in life between prosperity and disaster, is from 55 BC. In Seneca's tragedy Agamemnon, a chorus addresses Fortuna in terms that would remain almost proverbial, and in a high heroic ranting mode that Renaissance writers would emulate. O Fortune, who dost bestow the throne's high boon with mocking hand, in dangerous and doubtful state thou settest the too exalted. Never have scepters obtained calm peace or certain tenure, care on care weighs them down, and ever do fresh storms vex their souls. Great kingdoms sink of their own weight, and Fortune gives way, neath the burden of herself. Whatever Fortune has raised on high, she lifts but to bring low. Modest estate has longer life, than happy he who content with the common lot, with safe breeze hugs the shore, and fearing to trust his skiff to the wider sea, with unambitious or keeps close to land. Ovid's description is typical of Roman representations. In a letter from exile he reflects ruefully on the goddess who admits by her unsteady wheel her own fickleness. She always has its apex beneath her swaying foot. Middle Ages. Fortuna did not disappear from the popular imagination with the ascendancy of Christianity by any means. Saint Augustine took a stand against her continuing presence in the city of God. How, therefore, is she good, who without discernment comes to both the good and to the bad? It profits one nothing to worship her if she is truly Fortune. Let the bad worship her, this supposed deity. In the 6th century, The Consolation of Philosophy, by statesman and philosopher Boethius, written while he faced execution, reflected the Christian theology of casuis, that the apparently random and often ruinous turns of Fortune's wheel are in fact both inevitable and providential, that even the most coincidental events are part of God's hidden plan which one should not resist or try to change. Fortuna, then, was a servant of God, and events, individual decisions, the influence of the stars were all merely vehicles of divine will. In succeeding generations Boethius' A Consolation was required reading for scholars and students. Fortune crept back into popular acceptance, with a new iconographic trait, two-faced Fortune. Fortuno bifurans. Such depictions continue into the 15th century. The ubiquitous image of the Wheel of Fortune found throughout the Middle Ages and beyond was a direct legacy of the second book of Boethius's Consolation. The wheel appears in many renditions, from tiny miniatures in manuscripts to huge stained glass windows in cathedrals, such as at Amiens. Lady Fortune is usually represented as larger than life to underscore her importance. The wheel characteristically has 4 shelves, or stages of life, with 4 human figures, usually labeled on the left Regnabeau. On the top, Regnoan is usually crowned, descending on the right Regnavi, and the lowly figure on the bottom is marked some sign Regno. Medieval representations of Fortune emphasize her duality and instability, such as 2 faces side by side like Janus, one face smiling the other frowning, half the face white the other black. She may be blindfolded but without scales, blind to justice. She was associated with the cornucopia, ship's rudder, the ball and the wheel. The cornucopia is where plenty flows from, the helmsman's rudder steers fate, the globe symbolizes chance, and the wheel symbolizes that luck, good or bad, never lasts. Fortune would have many influences in cultural works throughout the Middle Ages. In Le Roman de la Rose, Fortune frustrates the hopes of a lover who has been helped by a personified character, Reason. In Dante's Inferno, Virgil explains the nature of Fortune, both a devil and a ministering angel, subservient to God. Boccaccio's De Cassibus Virorum Illustrium, used by John Lydgate to compose his Fall of Princes, tells of many where the turn of Fortune's wheel brought those most high to disaster, and Boccaccio's Age Remedii de Lunari dell'altra Fortuna depends upon Boethius for the double nature of Fortuna. Fortune makes her appearance in Carmina Burana. The Christianized Lady Fortune is not autonomous. Illustrations for Boccaccio's Remedii show Fortuna enthroned in a triumphal car with reins that lead to heaven, and appears in chapter 25 of Machiavelli's The Prince, in which he says Fortune only rules one half of men's fate, the other half being of their own will. Machiavelli reminds the reader in that Fortune is a woman, that she favors a strong, or even violent hand, and that she favors the more aggressive and bold young man than a timid elder. Even Shakespeare was no stranger to Lady Fortune. When in disgrace with fortune and men's eyes I all alone beweep my outcast state. Sonnet 29. Pars Fortuna in astrology. In astrology the term pars fortuna represents a mathematical point in the zodiac derived by the longitudinal positions of the sun, moon and ascendant in the birth chart of an individual. It represents an especially beneficial point in the horoscopic chart. In Arabic astrology, this point is called Arabian parts. The procedure followed for fixing one's pars fortuna in ancient and traditional astrology depended on the time of birth, viz. during daylight or nighttime. In modern Western astrology, the daytime formula only was used for many years, but with more knowledge of ancient astrology, the two calculation methods are now often used. The formula for calculating the daytime part of fortune is PF equals ascendant plus moon, sun. The formula for the nighttime part of fortune is PF equals ascendant plus sun, moon. Each calculation method results in a different zodiac position for the part of fortune. Al-Biruni, an 11th century mathematician, astronomer and scholar, who was the greatest proponent of this system of prediction, listed a total of 97 Arabic parts, which were widely used for astrological consultations. Aspects of Fortuna. Fortuna annaria brought the luck of the harvest. Fortuna belli, the fortune of war. Fortuna primigenia directed the fortune of a firstborn child at the moment of birth. Fortuna virilis, manly fortune, was celebrated only by women. Fortuna redux brought one safely home. Fortuna respiciens, the fortune of the provider. Fortuna muliebri, the luck of the woman. Typical of Roman attitudes, the fortune of a woman in marriage, however, was Fortuna virilis. Fortuna victrix brought victory in battle. Fortuna augusta, the fortune of the emperor. Fortuna balnearis, the fortune of the baths. Fortuna conservatrix, the fortune of the preserver. Fortuna equestris, fortune of the knights. Fortuna huius diei, fortune of the present day. Fortuna obsequens, fortune of indulgence. Fortuna privata, fortune of the private individual. Fortuna publica, fortune of the people. Fortuna romana, fortune of Rome. Fortuna virgo, fortune of the Virgin. Pars fortuna.